Mushroom research advances constantly, and the great discoveries may be around the corner. Unfortunately, life in a mushroom farm is always busy, and it's hard to stay up to date. Specialized scientific journals don't help due to technical language and frequent paywalls. Our mission is to bring the latest discoveries on mushroom science to the industry professionals and the mushroom people. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the new episode of the Mycelium Digest.
Welcome to the Mycelium Digest Mushroom Science, from labs to farms. This is episode 5. We're back with our featured paper series today, and we're going to do a full immersion, really focus on some truly groundbreaking research. The paper is titled Classification and Analysis of Agaricus bisporus Diseases with Pre-trained Deep Learning Models. It's by Albarack and colleagues, and was published in the journal Agronomy just this year on January 17, 2025. Our mission today is to really unpack how this cutting-edge AI, specifically deep learning, is basically laying the groundwork for something revolutionary. We're talking about future automated early disease detection on mushroom farms. It's about protecting our food supply, empowering producers. Before we get into the weeds though, if you happen to be listening on YouTube, please do remember to subscribe to the channel and give this episode a like. Or if you're on your favorite podcast platform, a subscription, maybe a rating, it really does mean the world to us. Helps others find the show.
It really does. And this study, it highlights an urgent need in a really vital industry. You know, the cultivation of Agaricus bisporus, that's the common button mushroom, it's just hugely important worldwide. Economically, nutritionally, it's praised for being low calorie, low sodium, low fat, cholesterol free, but high in protein, carbs, fiber, vitamins, amino acids, really packs a punch.
But despite all those good things, growing Agaricus bisporus faces some serious challenges. These fungal diseases, bacterial blotch, dry bubble, cobweb, wet bubble, they sound quite ominous.
They are. They can severely reduce the yield, the quality, especially if they're not identified and managed, really promptly.
Right. So it's a silent threat that needs quick action.
A pressing problem and the promise of AI.
So that paints a clear picture of the problem. What are farmers currently doing then to detect these things? And why aren't those methods quite cutting it?
Well, the traditional diagnostic ways. They're often pretty time-consuming, costly, definitely labor-intensive, and frankly, quite subjective. Plus, you've got regulatory constraints in some places, like Turkey, which limits the pesticides farmers can actually use. Sometimes this leads producers to use unapproved chemicals, unfortunately, which then raises potential health concerns for consumers because of residue.
Yeah, that's a serious concern. It really highlights why we need something faster, more accurate. So this is where the AI comes in, specifically convolutional neural networks, or CNNs. We've seen them do amazing things in other crops, apples, tomatoes, wheat, detecting diseases there.
Precisely. Yeah, CNNs are really well suited for this. They have the strength in extracting complex patterns from images. They can pick up on really minute distinctions between a healthy mushroom and an infected one. Now, there are other advanced architectures out there, sure, but this study focused on CNNs because they've proven pretty efficient in agricultural applications already.
What's interesting, though, is you said AI has made strides elsewhere in agriculture. But controlling mushroom diseases specifically seems to have gotten less attention in research. Why do you think that gap exists?
It's largely down to some unique challenges in mushroom farming itself. You've got these highly controlled growing environments, for one. Then there's the fact that many diseases look morphologically quite similar.
Tricky to tell apart visually.
Exactly. And historically, there just haven't been that many comprehensive studies focusing specifically on this area. So this research, it directly tackles that gap.
The groundbreaking approach, how they did it.
Okay, so given this pressing need and the unique challenges, how did Albarack and his colleagues actually tackle this? Let's break down their approach.
Well, their study had 3 main objectives. First, and this is arguably the most critical part, they developed a unique, high-quality custom data set. They put together 3,195 images, that's 2,464 diseased ones, and 731 healthy mushrooms. And crucially, all captured under really standardized conditions: lighting, color temperature, brightness, exposure, white balance, distance, camera angle, everything controlled.
Wow, that sounds incredibly meticulous. Where did they actually get all these images? Was it just one lab setting?
No, and this is where it gets really interesting. Their data collection went way beyond just local limitations. It took them over a year, and they directly engaged with mushroom production facilities across different regions in Turkey. So this ensured they got a broad, authentic representation of real-world scenarios, not just perfect lab conditions.
Okay, that's impressive commitment. And the actual imaging setup, you said standardized conditions. I heard they even built a special apparatus.
Yes, they did. They engineered a custom-designed portable imaging apparatus. The whole point was to ensure controlled, uniform lighting wherever they went. It had things like matte black bases, matte white walls to cut down glare, adjustable lighting channels with diffusers for even illumination, and a consistent 45-degree angle for the light, specifically to enhance the visibility of, critical disease features.
And they used a smartphone camera for this. That seems practical, but maybe surprising for high-tech research. Why that choice?
It was absolutely driven by practical constraints. They needed to capture images right there on site. They had to document the diseases in their early stages immediately after harvest with no delay. A smartphone offered that portability. They were careful, disabled automatic software corrections to keep things consistent, and they even integrated a 12V battery, so it was independent of external power. Perfect for different farm environments.
Makes sense. So building this data set must have had its hurdles. What were some of the biggest challenges they ran into?
Oh, definitely. Significant challenges. One was the interclass similarities. Some diseases, like dry bubble and cobweb, look very much alike, even to experts.
Right.
Then just achieving those consistent imaging conditions across many different farms, that's tough, logistically. They also needed disease diversity, so they sampled over a full 12-month period to capture the whole growth cycle, including that critical 2-3 day flush period. And finally, just getting access to the farms. Biosecurity is a big deal, so that required building trust.
So how did they actually overcome those hurdles?
Well, for the similar diseases, they brought in expert mycologists to guide the annotation, the labeling, to make sure it was accurate. For consistency, they used really stringent pre-collection calibration and standardized protocols for the imaging. And for farm access, it really came down to consistent communication and building relationships with the farm owners. A mix of science and, people skills.
Okay, so once they have this amazing, carefully curated set of images, how did they prepare them for the AI models?
They used a standardized pre-processing pipeline. First, resize all images to 224 by 224 pixels, a common size for these models. Then normalize the pixel intensity values and apply some background cleaning techniques. But importantly, they specifically decided not to use data augmentation.
Oh, interesting. Why not? Usually that helps models generalize better.
It does, but by not using it, they were essentially testing the models purely on the quality of the original dataset itself. A tougher, maybe purer test of the model's inherent abilities.
Right, and the models themselves, what did they do there?
They systematically compared 20 different cutting-edge CNN architectures. Some well-known ones like ResNet 50, DenseNet 201, DarkNet 53 were in the mix. And to make it a fair fight, all models were trained using the exact same parameters, batch size of 11, learning rate of 0.001, stochastic gradient descent run for 8 ocs, and the dataset split was consistent too, 80% for training, 20% for validation. Really rigorous comparison.
The results and their implications.
Okay, this is where it gets really exciting. All that careful work, collecting data, prepping it, setting up the models. How did these 20 AI models actually perform?
So they used a weighted aggregate scoring system, which I think is key here for understanding the real-world meaning. They combined several metrics. Precision got 20% weight, recall 30%, F1 score 30%, area under the ROC curve 10%, and average precision 10%. Notice recall and F1 score got higher importance.
Yeah, why was that?
Because, especially with mushroom diseases, failing to identify an infected mushroom, what we call a false negative, could be disastrous. It could let the disease spread rapidly, leading to huge crop losses. So catching every potential case was prioritized.
Ah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so considering that weighted scoring, which model emerged as the champion?
ResNet 50. It achieved the highest overall score, really impressive, 99.7%. Just outstanding accuracy and reliability across all the different disease categories. DenseNet 201 and DarkNet 53 also performed very well, following closely behind, confirming their robust models too.
99.7%. That's incredibly accurate. Why do you think ResNet 50 did so well? What's special about its architecture?
Well, ResNet 50's big advantage comes from its unique feature, these things called residual connections. They essentially help mitigate a common problem in deep networks called the vanishing gradient problem. Think of it like information getting lost or diluted as it passes through many layers. These connections act like shortcuts, helping the gradient signal stay strong, allowing the model to learn much deeper, more complex features effectively. That lets it reliably tell healthy and diseased mushrooms apart, even when they look quite similar.
That's a neat explanation. Residual connections, okay. Did any other models stand out? You mentioned DenseNet 201 was close behind. Did it have any particular strengths?
Yes. DenseNet 201 also showed remarkable capability, especially with those diseases that look visually very similar, like dry bubble and cobweb. Its architecture uses dense connectivity, basically. Each layer gets input from all preceding layers. This promotes feature reuse and helps the gradient flow efficiently. It lets the model capture really subtle differences between classes, which is crucial for those tricky cases. It hit 99.44% accuracy, with a good balance of precision and recall, too.
What about the other end of the spectrum? Were there any lighter models, maybe less accurate, but more computationally efficient?
Absolutely. Models like EfficientNet Bezier, for instance. Its accuracy was lower, around 94.52%, but it's significantly more lightweight, uses fewer computational resources. That makes models like it potentially very suitable for deployment on mobile devices or edge devices right there on the farm where you don't have massive computing power but need real-time results.
So it's that classic trade-off, maximum accuracy versus computational efficiency and speed.
Exactly. The best model often depends on where and how you plan to deploy it. And the researchers didn't just rely on scores. They used visual tools too. Confusion matrices, ROC curves, heat maps to validate the findings. These consistently showed ResNet 50 doing near-perfect classification, especially for things like bacterial blotch and cobweb.
Paving the way for automated farms.
This is really fascinating stuff. Stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, what are the real-world implications here? For the farmers, for agriculture's future.
The implications are potentially huge. These findings strongly suggest we can integrate these top models, like ResNet 50 or DenseNet 201, into IoT-based monitoring systems. Imagine cameras and sensors on the farm running these AI models in real time or near real time, constantly scanning for the earliest signs of disease.
Wow.
This could dramatically reduce the need for laborious manual inspections, catch outbreaks much earlier, minimize those devastating crop losses, and ultimately it supports more sustainable farming practices by enabling more targeted interventions, potentially reducing broad pesticide use.
That sounds incredibly promising. But like all research, there must be limitations, right? And what comes next? Where does this research need to go?
You're right. A key limitation is that the dataset, while extensive for Turkey, primarily focused on Agaricus bisperus diseases found there. It might miss diseases specific to other regions or different mushroom species.
Okay.
So future work really needs to broaden that dataset, include more mushroom species, cover more diverse growing conditions globally, and add more disease types to make the models more robust and generally applicable.
And what about getting these models working practically on farms, especially those resource-constrained ones you mentioned?
That's the other major avenue for future work. Models like DenseNet 201 are powerful but computationally demanding. So there's a real need to develop more lightweight architectures, specifically optimized for what's called edge device deployment. That means AI runs directly on the device on the farm, maybe a smart camera or sensor, without needing constant connection to a powerful cloud server. The ultimate goal, really, is this seamless, real-time implementation of these AI models right within the farm operations, allowing for dynamic monitoring and truly effective management of mushroom diseases in the real world. Outro.
Well, this full immersion into the work of Albarak and colleagues has been incredibly insightful. It really shows how deep learning isn't just theoretical, it's actively transforming mushroom science. It's moving us tangibly closer to that future of automated early disease detection right on the farms.
It's a fantastic example, isn't it? How advanced tech can genuinely bolster food security and help push agriculture towards more sustainable, data-driven practices, making these powerful tools potentially accessible for farms of all sizes.
Absolutely. So as you listen, what further questions does this spark for you? Maybe about the future of how our food is produced or the broader role AI might play in agriculture. We really encourage you to think about how these kinds of technological leaps could impact, well, your own plate and maybe even the planet. Once again, a huge thank you for joining us on the Mycelium Digest Mushroom Science from Labs to Farms. This was episode 5. If you are on YouTube, please do subscribe and like this focus session. And on your podcast platform, a subscription and rating truly helps us reach more curious minds. We'll be back soon with another conversation digging into the fascinating world of fungi.